Park Tae-won held his niece's hand tightly as they walked through the crowded transit station. Nexus 7 was the largest station he had ever seen. Thousands of beings from dozens of species moved through its massive halls. Some walked on two legs like humans. Others crawled on 6 or 8. A few floated through the air on wings that made no sound. Little Yuna looked up at everything with wide eyes. She was only 7 years old, and this was her first time so far from Earth. 6 months ago, she had been a happy child with 2 loving parents. Then the accident happened. A cargo container broke loose on Station Kepler 4 and killed her mother and father instantly. Tae-won had been her only living relative. He quit his engineering job the next day and became her guardian. "Uncle, look at that one," Yuna whispered, pointing at a tall creature covered in blue scales. "Don't point," Tae-won said gently. "It's not polite." "But he's so pretty." The blue creature turned its head toward them. Its yellow eyes looked at the small human girl for a moment. Then it made a sound like disgust and walked away faster. Tae-won sighed. This was how most aliens treated humans. Earth had only made contact with the galactic community 15 years ago. Humans were still new to space travel. They had no military power, no advanced technology, no political influence. Most alien species saw them as primitives. Some called them the soft ones, or the prey species, because humans had no claws, no armor, no natural weapons. He found 2 empty seats near the boarding gate and sat down with Yuna. Their connecting transport would arrive in 3 hours. He pulled out a small tablet and opened a children's story for her to watch. "I'm hungry," Yuna said. "I know. We'll eat on the ship, okay? The food here is too expensive." Yuna nodded and turned her attention to the story. Tae-won watched her face as she focused on the screen. She looked so much like her mother. The same round cheeks, the same curious eyes. Sometimes it hurt to look at her. But he would never let her know that. Nearby, a different kind of mother was watching them. Violet sat with her 3 larvae secured in a protective carrier beside her. She was Karathi, a species that looked somewhat like Earth insects, but stood over 2 meters tall. Her carapace was deep blue with swirls of purple that showed her high family status. Her 4 arms were folded across her chest as she observed the humans. How strange they were, she thought. So small and soft. The adult male could not weigh more than 70 kilograms. His skin looked thin enough to tear with a gentle touch. And the child was even more fragile. Valeth could see the blood moving through the veins in the little girl's neck. It seemed impossible that such creatures could survive anywhere. Her own larvae were much stronger, even at their young age. Their shells were already forming, and their mandibles could cut through soft metal. They would grow into powerful warriors or wise scholars. What could human children grow into? What purpose did such weakness serve? A group of Vorex diplomats walked past the humans. One of them, a tall reptilian male with golden scales, stopped and looked down at Tae-won and Yuna. "Interesting," the Vorex said loudly to his companions. "I did not know they allowed prey animals in the civilized sections of the station." His companions laughed. It was not a kind sound. Tae-won's body went stiff. Valeth watched his hands curl into fists. His jaw tightened. For a moment, she thought he might respond to the insult. She felt a small spark of interest. Perhaps the human had some pride after all. But then he simply looked away. He put his hand on his niece's shoulder and pulled her closer to him. He said nothing to the Vorex. He did not even meet their eyes. The Vorex laughed again. "See? Not even enough spirit to defend its own honor. Truly the lowest form of sentient life." They walked away, still laughing. Valeth felt something between pity and contempt. The human had submitted without a fight. He had allowed himself to be humiliated in front of his own child. What kind of guardian could not even stand up to simple words? She looked down at her own larvae. If anyone had spoken about her family that way, she would have torn their throat out with her mandibles. That was the Karathi way. Honor demanded blood. Insults demanded death. There was no other acceptable response. But the human just sat there, rubbing his niece's back gently, pretending nothing had happened. "Uncle?" Yuna said quietly. "Why was that lizard man so mean?" "Some people are just mean," Taiwan replied. His voice was calm and soft. "It doesn't have anything to do with us. It's about them, about what's broken inside them. Should we be mad at them? Being mad won't fix what's broken in them, and it will only break something in us." He touched her cheek. "We're not broken, Yuna. Let's keep it that way." The little girl thought about this for a moment. Then she nodded and went back to her story. Valeth's mandibles clicked in confusion. She had expected the human to lie to the child, to make up some excuse for his cowardice. Instead, he had said something that sounded almost like philosophy, almost like wisdom. But no, that was impossible. These were primitive creatures. They had no great culture, no ancient traditions. They had only recently learned to travel between stars. What could they possibly know about honor or dignity? She decided to stop watching them. They were not worth her attention. In 3 hours, they would board the same transport ship. In 3 days, they would arrive at her homeworld region. Then she would never see them again. She checked on her larvae one more time. They were sleeping peacefully in their carrier. Their soft breathing sounds filled her with warmth. She would protect them with her life. She would destroy anyone who threatened them. That was what a mother did. That was the only thing that mattered. The human male looked over at her for a moment. Their eyes met briefly. Valeth saw something in his gaze that she did not understand. It was not fear. It was not submission. It was something else entirely. Then he looked away and returned his attention to his niece. Valeth decided she did not care what it was. Humans were beneath her concern. In a galaxy full of powerful species and ancient civilizations, they were nothing but a footnote, a curiosity, a species that would probably go extinct within a few thousand years. She had no idea how wrong she was. The transport ship Wandering Star was not a luxury vessel. It was a simple carrier designed to move passengers between major stations. The cabins were small, the food was basic, and the crew did not smile much. But it was safe and reliable, and that was all Taiwan cared about. He unpacked their small bags in the cabin while Yuna explored the tiny space. There was one bed, one chair, and one small window that showed the stars outside. The bathroom was barely big enough to turn around in, but after 3 hours of sitting in that crowded station, even this felt like paradise. "Uncle, can I go look around the ship?" Yuna asked. "Maybe later. Let's rest first." "But I'm not tired." Taiwan smiled at her. She was never tired. Even after everything she had been through, she still had that endless energy that all children seem to have. It amazed him sometimes. If he had lost both his parents at 7 years old, he did not think he could have recovered so quickly. But children were stronger than adults in some ways. They bent where adults would break. "Okay," he said, "but stay in this hallway. Don't go to other sections of the ship, and come back in 10 minutes. Yuna was out the door before he finished speaking. Taiwan sat on the bed and rubbed his eyes. He was exhausted. Not just from the travel, but from everything. 6 months of being a parent when he had never planned to be one. 6 months of learning how to cook meals she would eat, how to calm her nightmares, how to answer questions about death that he did not understand himself. He loved her completely. But some days, the weight of that love was almost too heavy to carry. In the cabin next door, Valeth was having her own struggles. Her 3 larvae were restless from the long wait at the station. They crawled over each other in their carrier, making clicking sounds of complaint. She tried to calm them with soft words in her native language, but they were hungry and bored. The smallest one, her only female, managed to climb out of the carrier while Valeth was distracted. Before she could react, the larva had crawled through the slightly open door and into the corridor. "Kethai!" Valeth called out. "Come back!" But Kethai was curious. The corridor was full of new smells and sounds. She crawled forward, exploring this strange new world. Yuna saw the small creature first. It was about the size of a cat, with a soft blue shell and many tiny legs. Its eyes were like little black pearls. To Yuna, it was the cutest thing she had ever seen. "Hello," she said, kneeling down. "Are you lost?" Kethai made a chirping sound and moved closer to the human child. She could sense that this creature meant no harm. In fact, the human smelled interesting, warm and soft, and somehow safe. Yuna reached out her hand slowly. "It's okay. I won't hurt you." The larva touched her fingers with its tiny mandibles. It was gentle, almost like a kiss. Then Valeth came around the corner and saw them. Her reaction was instant and fierce. She let out a screech that echoed through the corridor. Her mandibles spread wide in a threat display. All four of her arms reached toward her child. Yuna fell backward in shock, her eyes wide with fear. "Get away from her!" Valeth screamed. "Do not touch my child!" But before she could reach them, Taiwan appeared. He moved faster than Valeth expected. In one smooth motion, he placed himself between the Karathi mother and his niece. His arms were spread wide. His body was a shield. "She wasn't hurting her," Taiwan said. His voice was calm but firm. "She was just saying hello." Valeth's eyes focused on the human male. He was so small compared to her. She could break him in half without effort. But he stood there anyway, looking up at her without fear. "Move," Valeth commanded. "When you calm down." Something in his tone made her pause. It was not defiance. It was not aggression. It was something else. Something that reminded her of herself when she protected her own children. She looked past him at her larva. Kethai was unharmed. She was actually reaching toward the human child again, making soft sounds. Valeth forced herself to breathe slowly. Her training as a mother told her to attack anyone near her young, but her mind told her that this was not a threat. This was a misunderstanding. "I apologize," Taiwan said, not moving from his position. "My niece didn't mean any harm. She loves animals. She thinks your child is beautiful." "She is not an animal," Valeth replied coldly. "She is Kirathi." "I know. I'm sorry. Wrong word." He finally stepped aside, reaching down to help Yuna up. "We'll go back to our cabin now." Valeth scooped up Kethai and held her tightly. Her hearts were still beating fast. But as she watched the human lead his niece away, she felt confused again. He had stood against her, not with weapons, not with threats, just with his body. He had made himself a target to protect the child behind him. At the station, he had not responded to insults. He had seemed weak and cowardly. But now, when his niece was in perceived danger, he had become something different, something almost dangerous. She returned to her cabin and secured all 3 larvae properly this time. But her mind kept returning to the human's eyes, that look he had given her, that strange mix of fear and determination. That night, she had trouble sleeping, and when the ship's alarm started screaming at 3 in the morning, she realized that sleep was the least of her problems. Red lights flashed in every corridor. The captain's voice came through the speakers, tight with controlled panic. "All passengers shelter in place. We have been boarded. Repeat, we have been boarded. Skrell raiders have attached to our hull. Do not leave your cabins." Valeth felt her blood turn cold. Skrell raiders were the worst kind of pirates in this sector. They did not want cargo or money. They wanted captives, living beings to sell on the black market. And they especially wanted young ones. She gathered her larvae close and began to plan. She was a trained warrior. She could fight, but she could not fight while carrying 3 children. In the next cabin, Taiwan held Yuna against his chest and listened to the sounds of violence growing closer. Screams, energy weapons, heavy footsteps that did not belong to any passenger. The raiders were coming, and they were hunting for children. The Skrell raiders moved through the ship like shadows made of metal and hate. They were tall and thin, with gray skin stretched tight over sharp bones. Their eyes glowed yellow in the emergency lights. Each one carried weapons designed not to kill, but to capture and control. Valeth listened at her cabin door. She could hear them in the corridor, kicking open doors, dragging passengers out of their rooms. The ship's security team was fighting somewhere near the main entrance, but they were losing. The Skrell had superior numbers and no mercy. Her 3 larvae huddled in the corner, sensing their mother's fear. Kethai, the smallest one, made a quiet, whimpering sound. "Silence," Valeth whispered. "Stay silent, my loves." She had to make a choice. She could stay here and hope the raiders passed them by, or she could fight her way to a safer location. Neither option was good. If she fought, she would have to put down her children. If she hid, she might not be able to protect them when the door opened. A scream from down the corridor made her decision for her. It was a child's scream, not one of hers, but someone else's. Some other mother's child being taken. Valeth was a warrior. She could not hide while children were being stolen. She was about to open her door when someone knocked softly. 3 quick taps, then 2 slow ones. A human pattern. She opened the door carefully. Park Tae-wan stood there with Yuna behind him. His face was pale, but his eyes were steady. "I have an idea," he whispered, "but I need your help." "What idea?" "There's a storage room at the end of this corridor. Heavy door, only one entrance. I can take the children there while you fight." Valeth stared at him. "You want me to trust you with my larvae?" "You can't fight while carrying them. And you're the only one here who can actually fight. I saw how you moved earlier. You're trained." She wanted to refuse. Every instinct told her to keep her children close. But he was right. She could not protect them and fight at the same time, and if the raiders reached them while she was holding her larvae, they would all be taken. "If anything happens to them," she started, "I'll die first." The words were simple, but the way he said them made her believe him. "Fine," she said. "Take them. Protect them." She handed over her larvae one by one. Tae-wan held them carefully against his chest, supporting them with both arms. Yuna helped, her small hands keeping the smallest one steady. "Storage room 7C, Tae-wan said. "End of the corridor, turn left." Then he was gone, moving quietly with 4 children in his care. Valeth turned toward the sounds of the raiders. Her mandibles spread wide, her fighting claws extended from her forearms. She had not killed anyone in 3 years, not since she left the military to raise her family. Tonight, that would change. Tae-wan moved as fast as he could without making noise. Yuna stayed close behind him, one hand gripping his shirt. The 3 Kirathi larvae were surprisingly calm, as if they understood the danger and knew to stay quiet. Storage room 7C was exactly where he remembered from studying the ship's map. He had memorized all the exits and safe rooms before they boarded. It was a habit he had developed after the accident that killed Yuna's parents. Always know your escape routes. Always have a plan. The door was heavy, made of reinforced metal. He pulled it open and ushered the children inside. The room was filled with cargo containers and equipment. Not comfortable, but defensible. "Stay here," he told Yuna. "Keep the little ones calm. Don't make any noise." "Uncle, where are you going?" "I'm going to watch the door. I won't let anyone through." He found a metal pipe attached to one of the cargo containers. It took all his strength to break it free, but he managed. It was about a meter long and heavy enough to do damage. Not much of a weapon against armored raiders, but better than nothing. He positioned himself just inside the door, ready to strike anyone who came through. For a few minutes, there was only distant noise, screams, weapon fire, the sounds of bodies hitting walls. Valeth was doing her work. Then footsteps approached, not from the main corridor but from a secondary passage. There was another entrance. Taewon had not known about that. The second door burst open, and a Skrell raider stepped through. It was huge up close, almost 2 meters tall. Its yellow eyes scanned the room and found the children huddled in the corner. It smiled, a terrible, hungry smile. "Little ones," it said in broken common. "Good price for little ones." Taewon did not think. He swung the pipe with everything he had. The raider was fast. It caught the pipe with one hand and yanked it away. Then it backhanded Taewon across the face, sending him crashing into a cargo container. Blood filled his mouth. Something cracked in his chest. "Weak human," the raider laughed. "Soft prey. Step aside. I only want the young." Taewon got back up. The raider's smile faded slightly. "Stupid prey. Stay down." It hit him again, harder this time. Taewon felt his ribs break. He fell to his knees, gasping for air. Yuna was screaming. The Karathi larvae were clicking in terror. Taewon got back up. "Enough!" the raider growled. It pulled out a shock weapon and aimed it at him. "Final warning, move or die!" Taewon spat blood onto the floor. He could barely breathe. His vision was blurring, but he did not move. "You'll have to kill me," he said. "And even then, I'll bite your throat out while I'm dying." The raider hesitated. It had captured hundreds of prey species before. They always ran or surrendered. They never stood back up after being beaten down. They never threatened to keep fighting beyond death. This was not normal prey behavior. That hesitation was a mistake. Taewon had been watching the raider's stance. When it paused, confused by his words, he noticed that its balance was off. Its weight was on its back foot. He lunged forward, not at the raider's body, but at its legs. The creature stumbled, surprised. Taewon grabbed the shock weapon and turned it around. The raider tried to pull back, but Taewon held on with strength he did not know he had. He pressed the weapon against the raider's throat and triggered it. The creature convulsed and fell. It did not get back up. Taewon collapsed beside it. He could not move anymore. Every breath was agony. But he turned his head to look at the children. Yuna was crying, but safe. The 3 Karathi larvae had clustered behind her, their small bodies pressed together. "It's okay," he whispered. "You're safe. You're all safe." Then darkness took him. When Valeth found them 20 minutes later, covered in the blood of 6 raiders, she saw something she would never forget. Her larvae were wrapped around the unconscious human, not hiding from him, protecting him. They had recognized what he was, a guardian, a protector, one of them, and in that moment everything Valeth believed about humans changed forever. The Karathi patrol ship Eternal Vigilance arrived 40 minutes after the distress signal. By then, the battle was over. 12 Skrell raiders lay dead throughout the transport ship. 8 passengers had been killed. 20 more were injured. But not a single child had been taken. Valeth had killed 6 of the raiders herself. But when the rescue teams found her, she was not celebrating her victory. She was kneeling beside an unconscious human male, pressing bandages against his wounds while her larvae refused to leave his side. "This one needs medical attention immediately," she told the first soldier who reached her. "He saved my children. He cannot die." The soldier looked confused. A Karathi warrior demanding urgent care for a human? That was not something anyone had seen before, but he followed orders. Taewon was carried to the medical bay of the patrol ship, where the doctors worked for 3 hours to save his life. Yuna sat in the waiting area, wrapped in a thermal blanket. A kind Karathi nurse had given her warm broth to drink. but she had not touched it. She just stared at the door of the medical bay, waiting for news about her uncle. Valeth sat beside her larvae sleeping in their carrier. She did not know what to say to the human child. In Kirathi culture, words were not enough for moments like this. Only actions mattered. So she simply stayed. She kept watch over the girl while her uncle fought for his life. It was the only thing she could offer. "Is he going to die?" Yuna asked quietly. Valeth wanted to lie. She wanted to promise that everything would be fine, but the child had already lost both parents. She deserved truth. "I do not know," Valeth said, "but he is strong, stronger than I thought any human could be." "He's the strongest person I know," Yuna said. "He gave up everything for me, his job, his home, his whole life, just because I needed him." Valeth felt something strange in her chest. Among the Kirathi, family duty was sacred, but it was expected. It was written into their laws and traditions. Abandoning family was punishable by death. Humans had no such laws. This man had chosen to sacrifice his life for a child, not once, but twice. First when he became her guardian, and again when he stood against the raiders. What kind of species produced such individuals? 3 hours later, the doctor emerged. He was Kirathi, with dark green carapace that marked him as a healer caste. "He will live," the doctor announced. 6 broken ribs, a punctured lung, internal bleeding, and severe concussion. But he will survive. Yuna burst into tears of relief. She ran past the doctor and into the medical bay, climbing onto her uncle's bed to hug him gently. Valeth watched through the doorway. Taewan was awake now, his face pale and covered in bandages. But when he saw his niece, he smiled. That soft, warm smile that Valeth had seen before. "I'm okay," he whispered, stroking her hair. "I told you I wouldn't let anything happen to you." "I was so scared," Yuna sobbed. "I know. I was scared too. But we're safe now." Valeth stepped into the room. Her larvae stirred in their carrier, sensing that the protector was awake. They made clicking sounds of excitement. Taewan looked at her, then at the larvae. "Are they okay?" "They are unharmed. Because of you." He nodded slowly. "Good. That's good." He did not ask for thanks. He did not mention what he had done. He just closed his eyes and held his niece, as if killing a Skrell raider while half dead was simply what anyone would have done. Valeth did not know how to respond to this. In Kirathi culture, heroes demanded recognition. They earned status and honor through their deeds. They wore their victories proudly. This human seemed embarrassed by attention. He acted like he had done nothing special. Over the next 2 days, the story spread through the patrol ship. Security footage from the transport showed everything. The human standing against the Kirathi mother to protect his niece. The human taking her larvae into hiding. The human fighting a raider twice his size and winning through pure determination. Other passengers told their own stories. They had heard the human tell the raider that he would keep fighting even after death. They had seen him get back up again and again, refusing to stay down. Ambassador Thren, the Vorix who had insulted humans at the station, watched the footage in his private quarters. He watched it 5 times. Each time he felt more disturbed. He had called humans prey animals. He had laughed at their weakness. But the creature in this footage was not prey. It was something else entirely, something that did not fit into any category he understood. The highest authority on the patrol ship was High Matriarch Seluun, an ancient Kirathi female with silver carapace and wisdom earned over 2 centuries of life. When she heard about the human's actions, she demanded to meet him personally. She came to the medical bay with 4 guards and stood at the foot of his bed. Taewan tried to sit up, but his injuries made it difficult. "Stay down," Seluun commanded gently. "I am not here to judge you. I am here to understand you." "Understand what?" Taewan asked. Your actions. You risked your life for children that were not your own. Not just once, but repeatedly. You suffered terrible injuries that should have stopped you, but you kept fighting. Why? Tae-Wan was quiet for a moment. He looked at Yuna, who was sleeping beside him, then at Valeth's larvae in their carrier near the wall. They were children, he said finally. That's all that mattered. But they were Kirathi children, not human. You had no obligation to protect them. I don't understand the question. They were scared. They were in danger. What else was I supposed to do? Seluan's mandibles clicked in surprise. Most species prioritize their own kind. This is natural. This is survival. You protected alien children at the cost of your own body. This is not logical. Maybe not. Tae-Wan met her eyes calmly. But it felt right, and that's the only thing I know how to follow. What feels right? The High Matriarch stood very still for a long moment. In all her years, she had negotiated with dozens of species. She had seen courage and cowardice, honor and treachery. But she had never met anyone quite like this simple human. You are a strange creature, Park Tae-Wan, she said at last. I do not fully understand you, but I believe I would like to. She turned and walked out of the medical bay, leaving Tae-Wan confused about what had just happened. Valeth stayed behind. She looked at the human for a long time, trying to find words for the storm inside her chest. In my culture, she said slowly, when someone saves your children, you owe them a debt that cannot be repaid, a life debt, sacred and eternal. You don't owe me anything, Tae-Wan said. That is not for you to decide. She touched her chest with one hand, a Kirathi gesture of deepest respect. You bled for my children. You almost died for them. Whatever you may think, Park Tae-Wan, you are no longer a stranger to me. She left before he could respond, and in the silence that followed, Tae-Wan realized that something fundamental had changed. He just did not know what it was yet. The Eternal Vigilance changed course to carry all passengers to the Kirathi homeworld. It was the nearest safe port, and many passengers needed medical care that could not wait. Tae-Wan was told he would need 2 weeks of recovery before he could travel again. He did not mind. He had nowhere urgent to be. The colony world where he had planned to settle with Yuna would still be there in 2 weeks. What mattered now was healing. What surprised him was the visitors. Every day, aliens came to his room in the medical bay. Some were passengers from the transport who wanted to thank him. Others were crew members from the patrol ship who had heard the story and wanted to see the human for themselves. A few were journalists who wanted to record his account of the battle. Tae-Wan did not enjoy the attention. He answered questions politely but briefly. He did not think of himself as a hero. He had simply done what needed to be done. The most frequent visitor was Valeth. She came every morning with food from the ship's galley. Not the standard medical meals, but special dishes she prepared herself. Kirathi cooking was strange to human taste, but she always found something that Tae-Wan could eat. You do not have to do this, he told her on the 3rd day. I know. Then why do you? She was quiet for a moment, watching her larvae play on the floor with Yuna. The children had become inseparable. The human girl and the 3 Kirathi young ones had formed their own little family, complete with made-up games and secret languages. Because I cannot stop thinking about what you did, Valeth said finally, and the more I think about it, the less I understand it. What's to understand? I protected them because they needed protection. But why? You did not know them. You had no connection to them. By every logical measure, you should have protected only your niece and left my larvae to their fate. Tae-Wan watched Yuna laughing as one of the larvae climbed over her shoulders. The smallest one, Kethai, was braiding the girl's hair with her tiny limbs. When I look at them, he said slowly, I don't see Kirathi or human. I just see children, small, scared, innocent. They didn't choose to be born into a dangerous galaxy. They didn't choose to be on that ship when the raiders attacked. They were just unlucky. And that is enough? Bad luck creates obligation? I don't know about obligation. It's more like... He searched for the right words. When you see something wrong and you can do something about it, you have to try, even if it's hard, even if it hurts. Because if you don't, who will? Valeth processed this in silence. It was such a simple philosophy, almost childish in its innocence. Yet this human had been willing to die for it. Tell me about yourself, she said suddenly. Your life before this. Tae Wan was surprised by the question. No alien had ever asked about his personal history before. To most species, humans were barely worth noticing, let alone understanding. There's not much to tell, he said. I was an engineer on a space station, fixed things that broke. It was quiet work. I liked it. And the child? Yuna? My brother's daughter. He and his wife died 6 months ago. Industrial accident. Yuna had no one else, so I took her in. You gave up your life for her. I gained a life. A different one, but not a worse one. He smiled softly. She's the best thing that ever happened to me. I just wish it hadn't happened the way it did. Violet studied him carefully. In Kirathi society, family bonds were complex and structured. There were obligations and debts, hierarchies and protocols. Love existed, but it was layered beneath tradition. This human spoke of love as if it were the only thing that mattered, as if everything else was just background noise. You are strange, she said. So I've been told. I do not mean it as an insult. I know. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the children play. Later that day, High Matriarch Seluan summoned Valeth to her quarters. The old female was reading through data tablets when Valeth arrived. Sit, Seluan said without looking up. I wish to discuss the human. Valeth sat. She had expected this conversation. Her frequent visits to the medical bay had not gone unnoticed. I have reviewed all available data about his species, Seluan continued. Humans are curious creatures. They have no natural weapons, no armor, no exceptional senses. By all measures, they should be easy prey. Yet they have spread across dozens of star systems in just 15 years. They adapt to any environment. They form bonds with any species. They refuse to die when they should. He certainly refused to die, Valeth agreed. The question is why? Seluan finally looked at her. I have a theory. Would you like to hear it? Yes, Matriarch. Humans evolved as cooperative hunters. Not the strongest, not the fastest, but the most persistent. They survived by working together, by protecting their young fiercely, and by never giving up. These traits are so deeply embedded in their biology that they cannot turn them off. Even when facing certain death, they keep fighting. Even when protecting strangers, they act as if those strangers were family. That would explain his behavior, Valeth said slowly. It would explain more than that. It would explain why humans are so dangerous. Seluan's eyes were sharp. Not dangerous in the way of warriors. Dangerous in the way of survivors. They will not stop. They will never stop. And they will protect anyone they claim as their own. Valeth thought about this. She thought about Tae Wan standing against her when he thought she might hurt Yuna. She thought about him taking her larvae without hesitation. She thought about him fighting a raider twice his size and winning through sheer refusal to quit. I owe him a life debt, she said quietly. A debt I cannot repay. There is a way, Seluan said, an ancient tradition, one that has never been used with an outsider before. The right of kith claiming. Seluan nodded slowly. I see you have already thought of it. I have thought of nothing else for days. The right of kith claiming was one of the oldest traditions in Kirathi culture. When someone saved the life of your children at great personal cost, you could claim them as family, not through blood, but through bond. They would become your kin, your sibling, with all the rights and protections that came with that status. It had never been offered to a non-Kirathi. The very idea would be considered heresy by traditionalists. It would be controversial, Selûne said. Many would oppose it. I do not care about opposition. I care about what is right. The High Matriarch smiled, an expression that involved a complex movement of mandibles. I was hoping you would say that, because I believe it is time for our traditions to grow. And perhaps this human is the one to help them grow. Valeth left the meeting with a heart full of determination. She knew what she had to do. She just needed to convince the rest of her species that she was not insane for doing it. The Kirathi homeworld was called Vethkai, which meant first nest in the old language. It was a beautiful planet of towering forests and deep canyons, where the air smelled like honey and rain. Billions of Kirathi lived there, in vast cities built into the sides of mountains and beneath the roots of ancient trees. Wan had never seen anything like it. He stood at the window of the transport vessel as it descended through the atmosphere, Yuna pressed against his side. The patrol ship had brought them to an orbital station, where they transferred to a smaller craft for the final journey. His injuries had healed enough for him to walk, though he still tired easily. It's so green, Yuna whispered. It's beautiful, Wan agreed. Valeth stood behind them, her larvae secure in their carrier. She had not told Wan about her plan yet. She wanted to wait until they landed, until she could show him what she intended to do. The transport settled onto a landing pad outside the capital city. A delegation waited for them, including several important-looking Kirathi in elaborate ceremonial robes. At their center stood a male with silver and blue carapace who looked vaguely familiar. That is Commander Gaelos, Valeth said quietly. My former mate, the father of my larvae. Wan glanced at her. Should I be worried? Possibly. They walked down the boarding ramp together, Yuna holding Wan's hand, the larvae climbing along Valeth's arms. Commander Gaelos stepped forward, his eyes fixed on Wan with an expression that was difficult to read. So this is the human, Gaelos said, the one who has caused such disruption. He saved your children, Valeth replied coldly. You might show some gratitude. I am grateful, but gratitude does not require what you are planning. He turned to face Valeth directly. I have heard the rumors. Tell me they are not true. They are true. I intend to invoke the right of kith claiming. A murmur ran through the delegation. Several of the robed figures exchanged alarmed glances. For an alien, Gaelos said flatly. You would make an alien your kin. He earned it. The law does not specify that the one being claimed must be Kirathi. Because it was never imagined that anyone would be so foolish. Gaelos stepped closer, lowering his voice. Valeth, think about what you are doing. Our children will have a human as their uncle. Our family name will be associated with this creature forever. The scandal alone... I do not care about scandal. Valeth's voice was like ice. I care about honor. True honor, not the shallow kind that worries about what others think. This man nearly died to protect our children. What have you done for them lately? Gaelos flinched, as if she had struck him. For a moment, Wan thought he might attack, but the commander simply turned and walked away, his guards following behind. The remaining delegation members guided them to a series of ground vehicles. As they traveled toward the city, Valeth explained what was happening. The Council of Matriarchs must approve any kith claiming, she said. I have requested an audience. If they approve, you will become my kin brother, with all the rights of a Kirathi citizen. Wan stared at her. Why would you do this? because you earned it, and because you deserve to know that your sacrifice was meaningful. But your former mate, the other Karathi, they clearly disapprove. Many will disapprove. Traditions are comfortable. Change is frightening. She looked at him steadily. But you told me once that when you see something wrong, you have to try to fix it, even if it's hard, even if it hurts. I believe that including you in my family is right, so I will try. The council chamber was located in the heart of the largest mountain, carved from living rock over thousands of years. Hundreds of Karathi filled the viewing galleries, all watching as Valeth and Taiwan entered the central floor. High Matriarch Selun sat at the head of the council, surrounded by 11 other ancient females. They were the oldest and wisest of the Karathi, the guardians of law and tradition. Valeth of House Kethron, Selun announced formally. You have requested to invoke the right of kith claiming for the human known as Park Tae-wan. Is this true? It is true, High Matriarch. The records show that this human protected your larvae during a Skrell raider attack. He sustained severe injuries in their defense. He killed a raider while nearly dead himself. All of this is confirmed by multiple witnesses and security footage. It is, High Matriarch. Then your claim has technical merit. However, this right has never been extended to a non-Karathi. Some would argue that to do so would be an insult to our ancestors. Commander Gaelos stood in the gallery. I would argue exactly that. This human, whatever his deeds, is not one of us. He does not share our blood, our history, our culture. To make him kin is to cheapen the very meaning of kinship. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Valeth stepped forward. May I speak? Selun nodded. When the raiders came, Valeth said, her voice carrying through the chamber, I faced a terrible choice. I could not fight while holding my children. I could not protect them and destroy our enemies at the same time. I was helpless. She paused, letting the words sink in. Helpless. The worst thing a Karathi warrior could be. This human saw my helplessness. He could have run. He could have hidden with his own child and left mine to their fate. No one would have blamed him. No law required him to help. No tradition demanded it. Her voice grew stronger. But he took my larvae into his arms as if they were his own. He carried them to safety, and when a raider broke through his defenses, he fought it with nothing but a metal pipe and his bare hands. He was broken, he was bleeding, he could not stand. But he refused to let any harm come to my children. She turned to face the gallery, her eyes finding Gaelos. He bled for them. His blood mixed with the floor where my children huddled in fear. And when I found them after the battle, my larvae were wrapped around him, protecting him as he had protected them. Her voice broke slightly. They knew. Even without understanding our laws or our traditions, they knew what he was. He was their guardian, their protector, their kin in every way that matters. She turned back to the council. You ask if including him cheapens our traditions. I say it honors them, because the spirit of kith claiming was never about blood. It was about sacrifice. It was about recognizing those who prove through their actions that they belong among us. This human has proven himself more thoroughly than most Karathi ever will. The chamber was silent. High Matriarch Selun looked at the other council members. A quiet conversation passed between them, too low for others to hear. Finally, Selun spoke. The council has reached a decision. By a vote of 8-4, the right of kith claiming is approved. Park Tae-wan will be recognized as kin to House Kethron, with all rights and protections thereof. His niece, Park Yuna, will be included as his child, and thus also kin to the house. She rose from her seat and descended to the floor, carrying a small vial of sacred oil. Park Tae-wan. Do you accept this claim? Do you accept Valeth of House Kethron as your kin sister, and her children as your kin children? Tae-wan looked at Valeth, then at Yuna, then at the three larvae who had become his unexpected family over the past weeks. "I do," he said simply. Seluan marked his forehead with the oil. Then she marked Valith's forehead and the foreheads of all the children. "It is done," she announced. "From this day forward, you are family." Valith took Taywan's hand and held it tightly. Tears ran down her face, something Karathi rarely allowed others to see. "Brother," she said softly. "Sister," he replied. And somewhere in the gallery, even Commander Gaelos found that he could not argue with the look on his children's faces as they celebrated their new uncle. 6 months passed on the Karathi homeworld, and Taywan discovered that family could grow in unexpected ways. He found work in the orbital shipyards, repairing engines and power systems. The Karathi engineers were skeptical of him at first. Humans were not known for technical skills. But Taiwan was patient and skilled, and soon they began to respect his abilities. Within 3 months, he was leading a small team of his own. Yuna attended school with Karathi children her age. At first, she was frightened by their size and their sharp mandibles, but children everywhere share certain things: curiosity, playfulness, the desire to make friends. Within weeks, Yuna had more playmates than she could count. She also spent every afternoon with Valith's larvae, who now considered her their cousin. Kethai, the smallest, followed Yuna everywhere like a loyal shadow. The two of them developed their own private language, mixing Korean, English, and Karathi clicks into something only they could understand. Valith watched all of this with a full heart. She had worried that claiming a human would isolate her family, but the opposite had happened. Other Karathi were curious about Taywan. They wanted to meet the alien who had earned kinship through sacrifice. Invitations to social events increased. Her standing in society rose rather than fell. Even Gaelos softened over time. He visited his larvae every week, and he could not deny how happy they were. The human uncle brought something to their lives that Gaelos himself had failed to provide: steady, quiet presence. Taywan was always there, always available, always patient. One evening, Gaelos found Taywan sitting on the balcony of Valith's home, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of purple and gold. "May I join you?" Gaelos asked. Taywan nodded. They sat together in silence for a while. "I was wrong about you," Gaelos said finally. "I judged you based on your species rather than your actions. It was unfair." "You were protecting your family," Taywan replied. "I understand that better than most. Still, I should have seen what Valith saw, what the children saw." Gaelos paused. "You are a good male, a good uncle. Thank you. I wanted to hate you, you know. It would have been easier. Hate usually is easier, but it doesn't build anything." Gaelos made a sound that might have been a laugh. "You sound like a matriarch." "I'll take that as a compliment." They watched the sunset together, and something that had been tense between them finally relaxed. The Galactic Summit convened 3 months later. Representatives from over 40 species gathered on a neutral station to discuss matters of trade, territory, and diplomacy. One of the items on the agenda was the status of humanity in the Galactic Concordat. For 15 years, humans had been classified as an observed species, which meant they had limited rights and no voting power. They could trade and travel, but they could not participate in major decisions. Many species believed humans were too primitive, too young, too weak to be trusted with real responsibility. That was about to change. High Matriarch Seluan arrived at the summit with a delegation that included Valith, Taywan, and the children. The sight of a human walking among Karathi nobility caused immediate attention. "What is the meaning of this?" demanded a Vorex delegate. "Humans are not permitted in the Concordat chambers." "This human is a citizen of the Karathi nation," Selûan replied calmly. "He holds legal kinship with House Kethron. He has every right to be here." The chamber erupted in argument. Some delegates were outraged. Others were curious. A few, including Ambassador Thren, watched in thoughtful silence. Selûan waited for the noise to die down, then stepped to the central platform. "I come before this assembly to propose a change in humanity's status," she announced. "I believe they should be elevated from observed species to full diplomatic partners." More arguments, more shouting. Selûan stood patiently until silence returned. "I know many of you view humans as inferior, soft, weak, easy prey." She gestured toward Taiwan. "6 months ago, I would have agreed with you. Then I met this man." She activated a holographic display. The footage from the transport ship appeared, showing Taiwan's actions during the raider attack. "This human weighs 70 kilograms. He has no claws, no armor, no natural weapons. The raider he fought weighed over twice as much and was armed with military equipment. By every logical measure, the human should have died within seconds." The footage showed Taiwan being knocked down, getting back up, being knocked down again, getting back up again, fighting with broken ribs and a punctured lung, refusing to yield. "He did not fight for himself," Selûan continued. "He fought for children who were not his own. He fought because they needed protection, and he was the only one who could provide it. This is not weakness. This is strength of a different kind." She turned to address the full assembly. "I have studied humanity extensively since this incident. I have learned that their history is filled with similar examples. Individuals who sacrifice themselves for others. Groups who band together to protect the vulnerable. A species that evolved not to be the strongest or fastest, but to be the most persistent, the most cooperative, the most protective." She paused to let her words sink in. "We have spent 15 years looking down on humans because they do not match our definition of strength. But perhaps our definition is incomplete. Perhaps true strength is not about what you can destroy, but about what you refuse to let be destroyed." Ambassador Thren rose from his seat. The chamber grew quiet. Everyone knew he had once insulted humans publicly. His opinion now would carry significant weight. "I have a confession to make," Thren said slowly. "I mocked this man's species when I first encountered him. I called them prey animals. I laughed at their weakness." He paused. "I was a fool." He walked to the center of the chamber and looked at Taiwan directly. "I have fought in 3 wars. I have killed many enemies, but I am not certain I could have done what you did. To stand against impossible odds, not for glory or honor, but simply because children were in danger." He bowed his head. "You have taught me something about courage that I thought I already understood." He turned to the assembly. "I support the matriarch's proposal. Humanity has earned their place among us." The vote was held that evening. It was not unanimous, but it was decisive. 32 species voted in favor. 8 voted against. Humanity was granted full partnership in the Galactic Concordat. After the vote, dozens of delegates approached Taiwan. Some wanted to shake his hand, others wanted to hear his story directly. A few simply wanted to look at him, as if trying to understand how such a small creature could have changed so much. Taiwan answered their questions politely but briefly. He did not feel like a hero. He did not feel like a representative of his species. He felt like an ordinary man who had done what needed to be done. Yuna and the larvae found him on a quiet observation deck later that night, looking out at the stars. "Uncle, are you okay?" Yuna asked. "I'm fine. Just tired." She climbed onto his lap, and the 3 Karathi larvae arranged themselves around his feet. Valith joined them a moment later, sitting beside her brother. "You changed the galaxy today," she said quietly. "I didn't do anything today. I just stood there while other people talked about me." "You know what I mean." He looked at her, then at the children surrounding him. His niece, his kin children, his family, built not from blood, but from choice and sacrifice. "I just did what felt right," he said. "That's all any of us can do." Valeth reached over and took his hand. "And that," she said, "is exactly why they were right to accept your species, because you don't do what is logical. You do what is right, and the galaxy needs more of that." They sat together in silence, watching the stars. Below them, delegates from dozens of species continued their discussions, their arguments, their negotiations. But up here, above all the noise and politics, there was only a family, strange and unexpected, human and Karathi, bound not by tradition or law, but by something older and stronger: love, protection, the simple truth that some things are worth fighting for, and the knowledge that as long as they had each other, they would face whatever came next together.